does your existence work for? Hello everyone. Today's talk is focused on if you were to see that, for example, you have a job and you're working for a certain organization, what does your whole existence contribute to? Why are you present here? When you look at that profundity, you begin to see that reality is, it's not a game, but can be seen as one. And if your contribution is caught in an individual realm, it will be temporal. So the most eternal contributions are ones in which when you look at your existence, suddenly it becomes clear to you, what am I existing for? What is my presence contributing for? Am I here just to do some regular tasks till the day I die, or am I here to get some profound understanding and go become a great act? You know, a great action in this world. Because you can try to think you have as much vision as much as you want, but once you see that there isn't action, action is the greatest vision in a world that needs action. So, in a sense, what I'm trying to suggest is that with the deep understanding and the self-observance, that we put ourselves up to certain tasks and certain purposes, and most of them are for our survival, but we must also consider that because we're in a world that has so many different cultures, so many different things, so many different ideologies, look at how many sentences I can make. You can, in a sense, create a profound vision and then, in a sense, be the expression that you are. There are views of seeing work in the sense that it is based on something. So if I told you, what are you working on? You'd be like, I'm working on this thing, that thing, this thing, I'm doing this thing, you know. So, but if I told you, what are you working for now? You would kind of see, okay, the idea of me has a job, has this everything that I consider about myself. But what does my presence have? Collective consciousness is something that you must consider in your co-creation. It's an external phenomena that gives new internal value. So what that means is me sitting here, when I look at you, things look objective. When I look at myself, things look subjective and beyond. So when I look at the beyond aspect of how everything is kept where it is, I transition in a sense that I am the observer of space and time. So it's like the observance takes away all considerations that there's a condition, there's a shape. To walk shapeless, it's as if you're present before manifestation. And in a sense, once you recognize that in the current cycles of manifestation you begin seeing that the new was simply what you became aware of and kept in the present moment. So it's your awareness in the present moment that is your novelty. So what that means is you could be standing here and you might have no idea what's behind your back. But if behind your back there's some guy in a motorcycle juggling, let's say, 3 mini motorcycles, you'd kind of see that that event would not be real unless, for example, if I was standing in front of you, communicated that. It does not mean that you don't know it. It does not mean that the truth is that. You know, it just means that there's certain things we are not seeing because our clarity is based on an individuation that is too solid to see itself otherwise. Our wisdom must be one that is incorporating all observance, and unfortunately our sciences are not including all observance. Science is saying this observance is real, only this is acceptable. Because their result is one that requires shape. Because science is here to work with shape. It is here to understand the world of shape. And so it is very sufficient as a tool for shape. But in regards to greater experiences, you must see that it's as if you're no longer thinking of who. It's like before there could be a who or there could be an I, you were existing. And there were no problems, it seems, even. Because when you're young and before that point where you recognize yourself in the mirror, you are a profound experience of just being. And so you see that you are always receiving from your environment, but if you choose to solidify yourself in a certain way of reception, and this could even happen subconsciously based on the conditioning you have, you are not seeing the greater fluidity, where the flows of new vision. lie. You know, it's a dynamic state. I'm saying, oh gosh, it's not that suddenly you read about Martin Luther King and you get it. It's that you go through certain experiences that life is preparing you for. And as you go through these experiences, the totality of your awareness and your ability to recognize immediately the integrative view of everything that is happening. What is that collective intelligence that is contributing by its mere being? You begin seeing that before you consider yourself as a limited shape, then going to the limitless, you consider that before consideration, the limitless is potential to exist. So you're in a profound space of observance where there is a simultaneous presence of infinity in many ways. Because, for example, if we can see that if we put two mirrors, if I take, for example, an apple and put it in, suddenly we see like, wow, it looks like there's infinite apples in that conception. It's as if infinity can be based on something dissolving into nothing in one layer. And so other things, if I suddenly take an orange, that's a different sense of infinity. But all these are not understood linearly. You must understand that it's like mankind has used this linearity to a point where it's like, all right, I get it. I see this body, I see mind. It's the mind's been using, you know, in regards to the brain and neurology. It's all being utilized. Now that I'm here, what am I supposed to do here? And this is where science really can't say anything, because science is just explaining why you're here. The purpose is your intention of the creation you want to do. And this is where it's important to really make sure that reality is clear. It's like that moment where you're walking in the park and you're looking at the tiles on the ground, you know? And the path that lays out, there's like aligned tiles. But you see that as you're stepping, sometimes your feet are stepped in the tiles completely, in other words, not on the lines, and sometimes they're stepped on the line, meaning that in our walks of life, our interpretation is linear and non-linear, but our essence is beyond it, because we are that new co-creation of the change that our intention can be. So you see, how is there free will if there is not a collective will? And so this is where ideology no longer needs to project a separate you. Because separation needs to be maintained by separate environments, and that is an extremely hard thing to do. That means, oh God, you don't need affirmations in the morning, you just need every moment to have that environment, because you are not seeing it real. It's as if someone told you believe this, and you just believed it and you never looked yourself. And so you're always missing your own feedback. In a lot of our deep questions, we're missing our own feedback, and we really don't know how to communicate. And this is where you need to understand, you don't need to communicate it externally, but always understand that thought is thought regardless. So if you have some ideas and you're not saying, it's just a flow of a presence of form in your awareness. And so it is not you. And so that is why you begin obtaining a comfort of detachment with everything you're attached to. Because you see that the observer is beyond the object of observance. You only think you're stuck in this materiality when there's no existential intelligence that is observing this from beyond space and time. Once you give yourself that, you begin seeing it's as if mankind has his modalities of being, as if one, he's considering an internal dimension simply because he's considering an external one. Now, because there's an internal dimension and an external one, it's as if externality is more solidified, but internality is more fluid, right? It's as if in our thoughts, I could go around the world, but gosh, I gotta buy so many tickets here and you make so much money. So what is the difference between me experiencing imagery that is, in a sense, in my abstraction, and imagery that is directly here? It is my attention to it, simple as that. And your attention as a multi-dimensional being who is confronting both a sense of time and existence that is going from point A to B. It's not, trust me, time exists, time and space is very real, but it is real in where it is kept. But you are not kept in time and space only. And so this is why it's important for you to really refine your vision of what your vision is, of what all these concepts can mean and what conceptualization is even here for. Because you realize it's not that the change is going to change your ideas. To be honest, a lot of these transcendental changes, a lot of these changes a lot of people are waiting for are not changes externally. If you are aware of your subtler presence, it's like your direct experience. You are so directly confronting your moment that everything that is present within it immediately shows nature. It's as if you're not looking for ideas, so you don't see ideas, but you always are seeing the deeper, profound meaning, because that is what you're naturally seeking for. we must not ignore also the fact that Rumi had this profound quote. Rumi is a Sufi mystic from 800 years ago, and it was just this human being's wisdom, to just other human beings who could see his quote. And he said, what you seek is seeking you, and so you might at first think of the cause and effect dynamic of this aspect of our reality. But once you begin seeing what you seek is seeking you, if you are seeking truth, how is it then truth is seeking you? Do you see what I mean? There is no destination but a reflection in a mirror that is saying, hey, look at where you're coming from. So when you look at where you're coming from, no longer it matters if you believe in God or not. It's just like, what am I doing with my experiences of being here? And so that's the most important thing. You are being here. And to deeply observe this will suddenly take you into that profound moment where the sadhu in ancient India was just there in the Himalayas and realizing that ideology was never driving this being. And so this is why if you seek as an idea while you're here, gosh, it's meaningless. And so many poets have said this throughout history, There was a poet who even went so far, his name was Sadi, to say that the world was like a ball of wool. It has no end and no beginning or end, So in other words, human as an idea, it is very empty. And so trust me, science is not here to really add color, but to show you what's the palette, where the plate where all the colors are kept. Science is showing you how you exist immediately in this immediate presence as an external physical being. But beyond that, it is your engagement with life. And so guys, there's no method, there's no secret, You have to get off your chair. So what that means is, if someone thought he could write a self-help book for people who were sitting on a chair, literally everyone right now, in the way you see yourself, if you think you're somebody or something, you're sitting in a certain chair of existence. You're sitting in a certain sense of idea of who you are based on how right now you're receiving your environment. As you see that you can never help others when they have to move themselves, you no longer give them help. You're no longer here trying to be like, hey, I'm that guru who has that solution. Instead, you're like, I'm that being who is seeing a world where you are more empowered in. Why are you still sitting in where you are when you can be standing like this? It is a point where we must project our ability. We must not be shy. If you're able, show it. Because trust me, I have thought at times that my value, when I was younger especially, I would go in environments where I would be incapable. I just didn't know what to do. So because I didn't know what to do, I would see others be more able in doing it, and in that sense, if it was competitive, I'd lose, right? So trust me, there's a lot of competitions you lose. But I noticed that what that person saw in that moment who had that ability, he had his own experience, but he gave me a valuable lesson in the sense that he provided the imagery that translated into some form of ability in my vision. So regardless, later on throughout the years, years passed, and one day I suddenly surpassed that ability where I was incapable. So what that means is, let's say when I was maybe like 10 years old, I was trying to attempt something that someone else more older could do. Later on, in a few years, I suddenly gained that ability, and I just realized, gosh, it was as easy as learning how to walk. Why was it so difficult? It's because it's not real for us before we do it. So that is why, regardless of how much you think you're certain, always check experientially what is going on. That is where situational awareness really comes into your vision. It's like there's no point of me giving a talk using fancy words if you're not understanding the talk. Do you see it? There's no need for me to give you complex structures when the answer is simply there. And so it is very important for every person who thinks he's contributing to mankind to see that he's contributing in clarity. And that clarity is to see that you cannot give anyone truth. You can make them understand it within themselves, because they require themselves to take their idea experientially. So if you suddenly find yourself in that situation where you got a friend or you got a person who you are seeing a problem they're in, but they can't see a problem they're in, right? And you're like, gosh, how do I communicate it, it could be as similar as your brothers or sisters smoking. You know, let's say your brother begins smoking, right? And it's something where you try to get rid of it. You try to, you know, hide the past. You try to take it away. But then you begin to see that because the attraction is coming from his reality, regardless of what I do, he cannot confront, for example, that perception. And this is not for cigarettes, guys. Oh my God, this is for basic things. I've had so many problems that I've noticed that if I went back in time and could see myself in that problem, in that bad habit, in that whatever destructive thing I thought I was trapped in, I would see that it's like I did not have the reality then. So I could not blame anyone for not telling me. No one's responsible because it's your self-awareness that you're working with. Not how nobody has, for example, me communicating my internal reality, actually there is no need for it. But the reason I'm doing it, because why not play? You know, and also of course for exploration, because that is why communication is important, because it gives us new frameworks to see. So what that means is if I find something new, I'm a temporal being. I'm here for, let's say, max 100 years. But my contribution to the species who's going to be here much longer is much more important. Do you see that? So failure becomes nothing when you're working for everything. When your life force is no longer fueling just an idea who's trying to get rich by trying to get other ideas. It doesn't work that way. You need to see why you're present, and to see that there's no company or no physical, I don't want to say physical, but no form that you're working for, because your formless observance is always working. Trust life, because in that life, sometimes you have to see that, gosh, trusting life means I trust all the suffering. I trust all those hateful moments. And what does that mean? This is where it's profound, guys. This is where man begins to understand why his presence is divine. This is why all those cultures, for example, Tibetan culture, you know, all religious cultures, all human actions become profound for you in their clarity. It is simply our awareness to our awareness. And it's time to be present here. You know, there's a lot of things I want to in my life, you know. I mean, desires come and go, but I see that there is no greater desire than to see the ability of the flow of what is coming into manifestation. So for me, it's a very great experience to see that nothing is wrong. Divinity is its proper placement in how creation is ideal. Take no service that is not real to you. If you're doing something that is not real for you, you're not contributing much. You're just living like a machine. And are you really living like a machine? God, you know. It's immediately clear to me that our past structures of conception, literally the human ideas they have, are not all good ideas, you know. For example, you might go and observe your culture and you might begin seeing, wow, my culture is doing certain things other cultures aren't doing, but at the same time it's lacking certain things. So immediately it's like your mind has 2 points of novel, how do I say it? New ways of bringing in genius into those lives. And genius, let me tell you, there's nothing more genius than something that someone needs. You know what I mean? There's been a moment where I've sat down and I've perhaps, you know, needed my phone, you know, and someone found it and I was like, that man is a genius, as if he's found the truth of the world, you know. It's because it's real for me, that experience, for example, that thing happens. So it's important to see that, okay, you've been maintaining yourself in a structured way and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with ego, there's nothing wrong with your name. These are phenomena. This is how you've been conducting yourself, and the program is not flawed. It's just we want to have more of an awareness of the program. So now that everything your life is, bring it to now. Suddenly be here. Sit on that park bench or sit in that meditative pose on that grass and just really perceive your meaning. You will begin seeing direction was always there. when you bring everything you are aware of, everything you know in the present moment, and you observe it, not as someone, just observe it as life. You know, as simple as life. As simple as you would observe a sunset, you know, or observe, let's say, something, you know, anything, naturally. So in that observance, you will begin to see that you have been provided with every image and relationship you need. So what that means is if I just went into a cave right now, I have enough images in my memory to sit down and co-create my new moments in that sensitivity. And so that's when I actually go in my subtler planes and you can actually experience more abstraction. But this is not the point. That's why I'm just saying multidimensionality is right now for exploration and your communication, but the actual thing is taking yourself to the absolute reality. You want to become certain. This is a deep question. This is not a game that is part of your life in which you must not pay attention to. This is your life which you want to be aware of. You know, it doesn't matter if you're an actor, whether as a liar among simple men, or as an actor who's actually, you know, an actor on TV. Regardless of who you are, you begin seeing that it is life that is the point. Not the meaningless co-creations that are made based on ideology. Our memory is a fascinating abstract design, and to be honest, I need to break it down to people. Your memory is not accurate. When you look at memory, it's never the same memory, because you're experiencing things different time with different understandings. There's no way we can actually measure memory. There's no way. We only consider memory because that's what we become aware of in the present moment, and we think that it's the neural phenomena. But the neural phenomena is actually in the maintenance and in the subtler way where our bodies are not just physical, in the sense that they're greater and greater branches, or let me say greater roots that are keeping your branches. So what I mean by that is that I do not want to say you are present in many different dimensions. I want to say all the dimensions you see are like the branches, and just how everything comes down to go into the soul, to go into nothing, that is actually where you're reaching the sincerity, where the path of devotion takes you to the peak of being. It is very important for us to acknowledge cultures properly and to not let that culture lose its technologies. What that means is you might be a person who suddenly you've moved from, let's say, for example, I was born in Iran. You know, I was born in Iran, and I moved to Canada. You know, and so then my life, you know, moved to other places. Then I realized, gosh, I'm a citizen of the cosmos. You know, so it's very important to see that, for example, there's certain things that culture is doing, Persian culture, which just for humanity, it is a useful technology to incorporate. Just in other words, if I just took that view. And so who can take that aside from those kids who are in the border of different cultures? If you're born and you're between two cultures, don't avoid your position. Integrate worlds. This is a globalized reality. And so, to be honest, we need to have more confrontation of reality, and so things need to become real. And so if technologies get lost, that means the ability for man to work with more of a sense of direct reality is limited, because he always knows he has that space for the search. Once you create a space for your search, it could be endless. It could be as profound as flying into an endless sky and dissolving into emptiness, or if you choose to keep an idea, or if you choose too much to be something that you know you're not, it'll be as if like there's a carrot there's a stick with a carrot in front of you, and you're chasing it, but you can never find it unless you stop and revision, revise your view. It's very important that we see that our contribution might not seem a lot, but you must see that the human being is not, his greatest contributions are actually ones where he's contributing a little bit every day to then see a bigger picture. Do you know? Think of yourself as that artist who is just putting one penny on this vast empty field. You know, 1 penny every day, and afterwards all these pennies are placed after so many days, and you go up and you see a grander picture. So similarly, we must see that what you really need is not too much ideology. You don't need to think too much about deep ideas, but you need to existentially confront the depth of your being, right? So we don't want to say, okay, we don't want to create fear out of our own assumption of what is insane, just because we have not looked at where our fear is originating from. Causality brings its own instrumentation because its intention is never from its own cause. So not every cause we think is from here. If I was to very playfully lead this whole talk to a certain characteristic in a story, I'm just going to tell you that let's take the human story, and there's a human being here, right? And this human being knows that there's aspects of itself it doesn't know, and it can't measure. At the same time, there are aspects of itself it knows, very clearly and very directly. For example, like this bench in the park, I can see it, that it's here, and he in a sense sees what is present in different aspects of how he views. You work with all aspects of self in their proper spaces, and so do not try to explain something that is found within your internal dimensions, unless intuitively you feel it's required. Because if you do it out of an idea trying to look good in front of other ideas, then it would break some things for you. It would trouble you. It's as if someone gives you, someone gives you a book and you throw it away, And so perhaps it's very important to see that we must preserve all knowledge without judgment and in utmost clarity of its cultural significance. Do you know how great it would have been if I had access to all those Vedic literature, but in accurate commentary, in the sense that not something I'm searching on YouTube, but that there would be a presence of that culture introduced how would I say it? I really don't know how to say it actually. We will learn from ourselves eventually, of course. But now we must see that before we take our next steps, how much are we actually seeing of our world, and where are we really clearly heading based on where are we really now? Once the journey fades in the sense that you, the character in that human story, begin seeing that it's all in how you interpret stillness, how you interpret movement in stillness, and how you interpret noise in silence. There may be temporary fixations on many things that may feel real to you at some point and feel even eternal, but they will not be, because your engagement will show you what's more. So what I mean by that is you might be, right now you may believe that life's like this, you know. But you will eventually see, as you go through different experiences, the idea of you which you have kept begins to see that it is present in a different movie than it thought before. So the difference perhaps from you when you're in your 20s and 30s is that there's been many things happening in your 30s which you realize. In your 20s you didn't, which in your 20s you didn't. And one of those is your sight. You know, it's the maturity that you did not have vision, but why weren't the tools provided for that vision, and why did it have to be something that life had to shatter you to show you? Do you know? Our educational systems don't look free to me, to be honest with you. And I'm not talking about their tuition, I'm talking about the access to the information and to the choice. Because every person at any stage of their life has abilities based on different ideologies, not just ideologies that are specialized for a certain task. So perhaps the freedom of our educational system would be one where through integrative systems, everybody has access to what they need when they need. To walk in a world where if you wanted to, you know, learn directly that your existence is working for nothing. You simply exist. And the minute you can confront the simplicity of your existence, you will begin seeing that in all those ideologies and in all those things you thought you believed and you thought you knew as someone were based on an existential foundation that wasn't actually existential. You hadn't experienced the emptiness before you began putting your ideas, and so you thought all those things from before were yours. All those ideologies, you thought your conditioning was yours, and you don't realize, gosh, it's just a jacket life's given me, and I could take it off and I could observe my being in ways where there's greater understanding. I hope this talk has served you. When we really speak about these existential things, when we talk about existence, when we talk about awareness to existence, Mr.Within is trying to, in a sense, show you in a very self-reflective manner that it is your opinion which is driving where you feel you're heading. But once you become aware of the vehicle that is your moment of being, you will see that what every human being has in common is that they exist in a moment. And so we must first realize that that judgment after is where conception comes from. How we interpret the moment. So your dissolution or your absorption or your deep observance and self-contemplation or meditation into seeing what is life will show you that, very playfully the life that is seeing you, and in a sense how you are even perceiving your illusion in vaster way. You know? It's as if it was creation that thought it was away from God. God kind of knew it was in creation. Right? God knew. God's like, I'm within everything based on many texts. So it is man who doubts. And so he must see that his doubt is coming from a psychology, because psychology was built on a platform of nothing, because human beings, these beings on this planet, developed to a point where they began utilizing sound. We will see that right now we're going for, I don't know, perhaps the next period or the phase of this plane into one where communication will be found in opportunities where it can be recognized in advanced phase. So the advanced communicator, the pilot of consciousness, this is where he as the individual point in this plane of dimension, as the human ambassador kinda, is being all that is in a moment of harmony and complete existential allowance for all things to be as they are. Because that's when you begin clearly working with your holographic universe. Because the hologram does not mean that everything is holographic. There's something very real keeping the hologram here. So it is simply the observance of the hologram which will free the mind that educates itself in how it explores its dimensions of experience. We may step on crumbled leaves, and we may see many people fall. But if we are not putting in us the responsibility in a world where our news networks are not really the happiest channels, to bring beauty to us. You know, you need to bring it for yourself. You need to see that nobody can give you new eyes other than yourself. Nobody can perceive beyond your limitation other than you, because it's useful to no one, and no one is seeing you limited in the way you are seeing yourself, because no one can. They can only externally see an aspect of it, but again, it's all extending from your internal sense of being. So what that means, it's the observer is untouched, but what is being touched a lot and being played around with by science, and just in regards to just physicality and how the laws of this universe keep us here, we see it's all about an existential allowance. It's like the minute we realize that humanity is getting close, but the minute beings realize it, and it would be nice because it would be a presence thing. So like, it's like the more people who realize their real eyes will, in a sense, affect their environment and make their plane of existence more clear. Your existential knowing is a part of this existence. You are on the edge of this world. You are here. Do you know? Like, you see that tree that's existing here to show you how there are other things? Well, you are also existing with an intention to be even physical enough to see this tree. But it does not mean that we must accept very inefficient ideas simply because this is what humanity thinks now, when each of us is a new point of existential attention. If I come and ask you a question, simply your answer to me would be as profound as a new world. Do you know? So do not think you have little to contribute. Many human beings should begin speaking about their being. Their sense of beingness here, their sense of life. Just communicate how you're alive, and you will see that not only will you bring clarity to yourself, but you will also make the intensity of your life exciting and abundant. So what that means is, sometimes I've seen abundance come in my life, and I've noticed the abundance is not for you. The abundance is a flow in which you associate and you think it's coming to you. But in a sense, it is your self-awareness that allows you, just like as a drop who's thinking, oh, this is only me, I'm a drop, suddenly merging into a river or something, you know. And your direction and your command and your flow of understanding is just in a greater body. It's in a greater state of being. So after, let's say, in one state of being, you have read all the books in the world and tried to absorb that knowledge, simply your awareness to another state of being, if you've thought you're horizontal, suddenly you're realizing the vertical dimension, you will have such profound insight that you will see that, okay, knowledge is multidimensional too. Knowing is not just based on how much I read and, repeat. Repetition should be kept based on what is relevant and what you need to do. So make sure that whatever you're learning the way you are receiving that concept is relevant to where you're heading in this life. Every moment is contributing. It's being expressed, it's being present. Every moment is a chance to observe greater efficiency. And so once you observe it, it's not like you have to go and change the world. You just incorporate it, and your vision in your mind, the world that's really, about to fall apart, suddenly becomes more clear, because you see, okay, now I am a greater ability. A lot of clarity and a sense of, let us say, a mini enlightenment that people get is the recognition that ideology is being utilized by the being. Do you see? It is not you. It is clay. Ideology and how humanity receives it, it's like clay, and sometimes he has this box which he's considering as, again, his memory, where he thinks he puts it in, but that box is not even his. It's like how you are remembering things right now is in a present moment, which you are here, you are in this present moment creating a newfound moment from that moment, from the information of that moment, similar to just creating another bubble inside a bubble, right? To then seeing that you are interpreting based on how you are a new creation. So novelty is before interpretation. And that is why it's very hard to believe things when you see, gosh, there's so many new moments to receive new understanding. And the profound aspect of it is that it's all here. I hope that clarity becomes your immediate priority. And, self-awareness is just as simple as walking in a park and just being alone. Just getting yourself away from noise and imagery that you've constantly been exposed to, and just go and walk in nature and just suddenly see that your thoughts will expand. It's as if new environments are being communicated, not just like you're in nature, but in your mind, in your thoughts, in your thinking. The novelty of existence finds itself very blissfully and very compassionately all-giving. The nature of your plane is keeping you, and that is the love. That's the existential love. That's how you see, oh man, before I love myself, gosh, I just love that I exist. And by simply acknowledging this and really making this real for you, in other words, it's your appreciation, so and in that appreciation, you'd simply see you are in a new moment with an existential allowance that does not need to be shaped. You're present and you walk well. Much blessings and namaste.